So it is 5 o'clock, and we'll call this meeting of the Water and Sewer Committee to order. We have a full slate of the committee, and on the agenda, 5 items. Council's rules of procedure. We'll follow that with conversation about providing water service to newly annexed properties, and then we'll go into a review of the water, stormwater, and sewer funds for up to year to date, and with recommendations for 2026 rate recommendations. And with that, we'll start off with the council's rules of procedure. With the with the changes to the finance committee rules, I thought it made sense to add into our council rules the fact that we are to meet during and have this meeting on an annual basis, as they in their rules stated some talk about the frequency of meetings. And so I added language that is that we approved into our water rules and sewer rules last year, and the language specifically about meeting frequency. It says the Water and Sewer Committee, I didn't write it that well, shall meet on an as-needed basis and annually in the third quarter of the year for the purpose of reviewing a comprehensive analysis of the water fund and the sewer fund and any proposed recommendations for water, wastewater, and or stormwater rate adjustments. So the big thing in there, its language just pretty much came out of the water and sewer rules. The big thing is that in our water and sewer rules, we had stated we were going to have this in the third quarter, and in conversations with Rob and Jeremy about scheduling this meeting, we were like, okay, let's have it in September, and then for some reason we just said, now we're better off to do it in October. We'll have Q3 done. We'll have more information for the pro forma, and we still in October can have the meeting, and we have enough time to consider any rate adjustments if there are, and have them go to council and input and all that, and it doesn't affect budgeting. So I think so. There's two kind of issues on the table here. One is just the desire to amend the council's rules of procedure to include a frequency of meeting. I'm thinking that's a no-brainer, and everybody would agree. But I'll wait for a recommendation on that. But the other part is when we should meet, when we should have this rate adjustment fund review meeting, whether we want to continue to do it in the third quarter as the water rules state, or whether we want to change it to a period of time between the first and second council meeting in October. And I'm interested in anybody's thoughts on it, administration or committee. Just go ahead, Dan.
I guess I would just prefer the flexibility, because I think there's some years are going to be more complex than others. And I think like eventually we'll get to the water, and I think that's going to be complex. And I think we might have a couple go-arounds. We would start earlier, and I don't know. I'm not sure what the wording, could it be third or fourth quarter, and just leave it open. I mean, I agree. I like the frequency. We need to have the meeting, and I'm good with having it in the, in the rules, but I guess I just leave it more flexible.
Rob,
to everything you said, I agree with. But if we recall, in April as well as in June, we had the pro formas and we reviewed them. So we're gonna, as I've said, when we actually established this process, seems like 2 years or better ago, we're going to know when we're going to have to make a change. And when we discuss the pro formas and the fund status later on in this meeting, you're going to see very similar information that we talked about in April as well as in June. But to be able to have refined numbers through 3 quarters of the year, we know when we're going to have to propose a change to these funds. But I like the ability to have 3 quarters worth of data. So, but we're going to be having these conversations, to your point. We're going to have these as we go through the year, and some are going to be more complex and more, there's going to be more to them, and some are more straightforward. So we do have it in language in the rules, I think, beginning Q4 is fine, but we're going to be having these conversations throughout the year. I mean,
Okay.
that's our responsibility to anticipate changes and see what's coming and make those adjustments.
So we're going to have preliminary meetings and then just finalize it in October. Is that kind of the?
Well, again, we had water and sewer meetings for different topics, and
Yeah.
and all of a sudden we're like, well, if we're getting together, let's take a snapshot of where we currently are with our with our fund health, and we did that. And now these funds, they're because we have a 10-year capital plan, we have operational expenses that are all nailed down. Unless there's these major things that we didn't anticipate, it's marching along as we predicted and as we know when those changes are going to be having to be discussed and recommended and made. So, again, the formality of the cadence of the meeting as people change and it's in writing, I think that's important to have that structure established. And we've done a lot since, we started talking about water rules 3 or 4 years ago, and I like to have that structure. But it's our job over here to make sure that we are looking at this and we are coming to you saying, hey, we're good, or we feel we're good, or we need to make a recommendation. So I think to put wording around it, I think that's important, but we should not be surprised by an anticipated change based on how we analyze these numbers. Even though it's quarterly or even at the end of the year, we're looking at these constantly.
Jim?
Just for the benefit of the budget process, it would be really beneficial if the meeting does occur before your second meeting in October. That fits into our flow in terms of the process that we have to follow and my staff. So I wouldn't want it to go into after that second meeting or into the 1st of November. That would be a problem.
What if we change third quarter to just simply say October?
Sure.
Yeah, I would be okay with that.
It accomplished what we said originally with Q4, so October's fine.
And then and then the obvious is that we shoot to have it prior to so that council can see it by the second meeting. If you could do it, and we should be able to do that.
But what if council disagrees? What if we make a recommendation and council doesn't?
Council has the ultimate
Right.
authority on this.
So that's what I'm saying.
And
To your point,
well,
though.
but wait a second. Understand this. And we went down this path. The service safety. This is a recommendation
That's right.
to the service safety director, who has the ultimate authority on what is it?
Water.
On water.
Storm and sanitary
Gets-
actually go through the legislative
Go
process.
through the legislative process.
Okay, I'm good with October then. All right.
Yeah.
And I think that resolves your.
As long as they're finalized by your second meeting in October. Yeah, it has to be finalized by the second.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion that we recommend amending council's rules of procedure with language about meeting frequency in October, and amend the water and sewer rules to change the meeting occurrence to be in October. So then, Rob, that would put it on you to update those rules. They would need to be on the agenda for approval, and then republish. So we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Seeing as though there's none, all those in favor of the recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, and that is recommended. Jeremy, let's talk about water services for newly annexed properties without current water service.
Yeah, so with the new properties that are going to be annexed into the city, and I think we're going to run into this more and more if people keep annexing or anything like that. But the question kind of comes up is if they are currently on a well and they were outside the city limits and now they're inside the city limits and they're wanting city water, whose responsibility is that to run up to their property? Is the city's responsibility to run the main line because we are the supplier of that, or is that the homeowners? You can look at it two ways. If you look at the way where sanitary is, you can say, well, we treat the same and, the homeowner would run up there. But in this case, it's a little bit different because in our water rules, you can't use wells for potable water. So if we have in our water rules that you can't drill a new well and you're now inside the city limits, now we're forcing the hand for someone to run a water line when if they have to run 1,000 feet, a well's, say 10 to 15 grand, and running 1,000 feet could be 50 to 100 grand. So, if I was that homeowner too, I'd be like, well, I'm just going to drill well. If it's the same thing I had, why do I have to do that? We do maintain the main lines all the way up, and we maintain the services to the right of way, or to the meters at least. So, there's a little bit different on that, but I think we're going to be running into position with quite a few of these at their residential homes. They've had sulfur probably water in the past, and now they're wanting to get rid of that, and they want city mains, but now who's ultimately bearing that cost to run that main up through there. We don't have the Department of Health or ourselves don't have a directive that says like you have to tie into the water. So even if we ran it past the property, it's not like you're forcing the hand of another property. Do we set them up as rotary and stuff like that? But I think this is going to be a conversation that we could have a couple properties come to us saying, hey, I want water, but are you guys going to run it to me, or do I have to pay for it? And if I have to pay for it, I'd rather drill a well again. So
Brian.
Anybody, please.
I guess maybe I would say that so we don't end up in a situation like we've kind of run into recently where we have folks on, for example, a septic system and we don't know about it. Perhaps we should, I don't know, I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe we get ahead of the curve on those, so to speak, so we're not in a position where, folks are complaining that we're not adequately serving them, etc. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks about that, but I just, like I said, I want to throw that out there.
It's a good question, Jeremy.
When
so I brought it to you guys.
You chicken.
when we annex, Denise always reads something about the services. We have an ordinance about the services we're going to provide. And we're going to plow their street. We're going to provide them police and fire protection. And I think one of the things one has the expectation when they're in the city, and this kind of goes along with the folks who are on septic within the city. Yeah, people expect to be on city water and city sewer, and so I think. So does that mean? And that might be the reason why somebody would annex in. They're on well water, and they can see long term that the well's not going to. It isn't a long term solution for them, so they say, let's get in the city. So does that mean the instant that the legislation passes that and goes into effect that they're annexed, that we should be digging the water line and the sanitary line? No, but I think it means that we should be working towards that. Where it gets interesting is, and I've been scratching my head on this ever since you first asked this to be on the agenda. But where I scratch my head is what you just said. What if they're on a well and the well has gone south now, and we're not anywhere near getting water to them? What's the solution? And I guess you could almost say you'll take care of that when we come to it. And then, as Councilman Baumann said, we work towards extending service to areas within the city. But I don't know how you. I'm really interested in other opinions. And
I don't really know how we can, if it's in our rules that you can't use wells and dig wells, I don't know how we can allow somebody to do it on a new annexed property. Then you're gonna have people throughout the city go, hey, I had a well out here, you made me close it down, I want a well for this, I think you're opening a can of worms. But I kinda agree with Grant. It's something that can't be done overnight, putting in water, but I think it's something that we need to move forward with and look at it. look at what the cost is gonna be, 'cause it's not
Yeah.
gonna be cheap to do that.
We need to be on the, we need to, I would agree totally, but we need to be on the road to providing those services, in my view.
I think there needs to be a cost sharing too, because if
Yeah.
you were buying a new lot in a development, part of that lot cost is the developer putting a water line out to the, so so it's not a freebie, but I don't know how there's got to be a cost share.
No, I don't think anyone's saying that it should be the burden completely of the city or vice versa. We just don't know what direction we should
Yeah.
go because we're going to set a precedent, to your
Yeah,
point.
right.
And the other is, what if there's that one property that's annexed and it's surrounded by other areas and that's the only one that's going to need that line, that water line, meaning other routes. There are other directions where other people are getting their city water and it's not convenient to tie into this one. So where does that burden fall?
Jim?
I know there are crossover laws when someone is a water customer, but the question kind of begs a legal review, I would think, in my mind, that if they're not a water customer and they want to do a well, even though they're in the city limits, are they subject to a water rule that says they can't dig a well?
I think that's what we just said, is it not? That,
Well,
that they would,
I
they,
think Jim's saying is
Let's
illegal.
talk,
but they're legal.
mics, please, with them on.
I think what Jim's saying is illegal for us our rules to go into effect. I would surely think that our rules would go into effect because you're now in the city limits. I mean, I don't know. That's,
So do the water rules apply? I don't know. You're gonna need Rob Reiner to opine on that probably.
But I also, I mean, you kind of think about that. You also don't want to get down the road. Say they do, let's say they dig a new well, okay? 10 years from now, we run a main line down in front of their house, and they're like, hey, guess what? We're going to tie into that now. I know there's cross-contaminating. There is laws on that, but now we went against what we said is to make sure to enforce that we don't have cross-contaminating. All of us are not, let's say all of us are not here, and all of a sudden someone else comes in, and now we're tying in. We had a city main and a well line tied into it. And I think that what we have, and I get what you're saying, fighting her to look at that, but I think what that is doing is helping prevent any kind of cross-contamination on that.
Yeah, I could see him recommending a companion ordinance with the implementation of the decision on the process.
In my mind, it's no new wells. We're just talking about existing wells. I mean, I would think we would hold the line on no new, and if their well went bad and they got to put one in as an emergency, I guess that you give them, I don't know, but I guess you always get into that, but you have to have water, but we just have,
So when you talk cross-contamination, you're saying that I have a house here, it's being fed by a well, I can't connect a city water service into that house because it's also connected to the well, they would have to disconnect?
Yeah, because
And
if
then-
that well is contaminated, then there's a chance that will go back into our main line and contaminate the whole system.
How
So
would you-
can't?
How would you ever know that they didn't reconnect it? I mean, couldn't that happen now? Somebody had an abandoned well and it's that they decided it's working and they just rehook it up. We would never know, would we?
Well, if they had water, we would know if the water meter spins backwards.
Okay.
Then there would be determination that something's going on, and the rules do specifically state that they do have to allow us access to ensure that a well is not cross-connected in the residence, because if there is a well on the property for irrigation or for agricultural purposes or anything, they have to allow the city access to ensure that it is completely isolated in a completely separate system. It cannot physically be connected. There can't be a valve or anything. It has to be physically completely apart from our system. But to the point, how would we know? If somebody tied one in the water meter and they basically began pressurizing back to the city, we would see the meter turning backwards and the system would flag it and we would go out and investigate.
And you would shut off water, city water that to them ASAP, or what?
Well, we'd go out and see, and if the well, if we found a well attached, we would, we would tell them they had to get that separated, and whether we shut the water off that day or whether or not we work with them, but they would have to, one of the two would be shut off that day.
Because I would just think protecting from contamination.
Correct.
What are you looking for from this august body, other than a lot of confused looks?
I guess a direction of how you guys would want to see this go. I mean, in either case, I don't have a problem designing a project to get someone water to their system or to their house or sanitary. Water's a little easier because it's pressure, so I don't have to worry about grades as much. I think I would want a kind of a one voice, agreement that if someone is wanting water, that we'll run the main to them, but we do a rotary where they have to pay for the main line that's in front of their frontage. So the city will put it in, but we'll recoup our costs. That's one way we can do it. We are going to be fronting the bill on that. But I think knowing what the water quality is in some of these areas that people are annexing in, I know some of the reasons why they're annexing in, like Grant was saying, is because their water quality in their well isn't great. They're running sulfur systems, and that's an expensive system to run, and it's hard on your pipes. So they'd rather tie into a city main. But then at the same token, we're telling someone that, just annex in, yeah, we'll get you water, but it's going to cost you $120,000 to get there. I would be fine with the rotary charge, because now everyone that ties into that, if they tie into it, they're paying a portion of that. We supply the system. The downfall of that's only pretty much good for 10 years, Jim, or rotary? It's got an expiration. It's got an expiration date to it. So there's going to be a point that, say half the line we may never recoup our cost on. But I guess I kind of want direction from you guys, because if I have these people coming into my office and say, hey, I want water, how can you get it to me? And I start putting things in the capital or something like that, then we had this conversation is, hey, yeah, we had this conversation that once people come in, if they are wanting it, we're running, but we're setting up as a rotary, or we're having them pay for the whole thing. So I guess kind of want a direction. So as these people come in, I have a opinion for them.
How does the rotary work again?
So rotary, you pretty much pay for whatever the frontage of your house is. So if it's 100 foot long, your frontage, you pay for whatever the cost of water line is, your half of the water line. So if you had 100-foot property and I had 100-foot property, I'll pay half of that 100 and you pay the other half of the 100. So pretty much in the end, you're paying for a portion of the water line that's in front of your property. So that way everyone has a shared cost into it.
Yeah, when you tap in.
When you tap in, not right away. So once you tap into it, then there's a rotary.
Pay over time, or just it's a lump sum? Or
It's a
lump sum.
lump sum.
So why wouldn't this just be a straight rotary fee question? What I don't understand. I guess we'll go back and how is this unique? Then just you have a property someplace that's now in the city, but it's not near a water line. We're going to extend a water line to them. Why is that just not a straight rotary fee situation? How is it different?
A big part of that issue is exactly what Jeremy's alluded to, and that is it's a solo property, and maybe there's 5 parcels or one unsubdivided parcel. If they don't tap in within your required time limit, whether it be 10 or 12 years, then you don't recapture the money. So you're fronting and you're paying for that water line and you'll never get it back, which does happen.
So, you know, say 140, and I'm not saying they're annexing in, but let's play hypotheticals because I like playing those. You know, say that someone wants to run a water line from, or there's one property on County Road 140 north of 99, and that's a mile away, but they're the one property and they're having terrible sulfur problems, or they want water main, and they all annex into the city. So kind of from that standpoint, it's going to cost us over $1 million to run that water line there. And you have one property that's 100-foot long, and you're recouping a very small portion of that. And now everyone down through there doesn't want to tap. So we ran $1 million line down to one person, and you only recoup your costs for one person. Then in 15 years, someone else tie into it and benefit from it. But you're making a huge capital expense right off the bat in hopes to get paid back. So it will have a hit to, you know, I don't want to say hit. I guess it will have an impact on capital planning.
That's an ugly scenario.
That's a great conundrum you have given them tonight.
Trying to get ahead of the curve on this one.
If
Is this sort of a real deal?
I'm
Could
going to
be.
have people
couple.
Could be.
I have a couple people that asked,
And it would be
where's
$1
the
million
water line for
'cause
this?
It's going to be $1 million because you're going to oversize it, or
Well, you know, that's just hypothetical, you know,
understand,
but yeah, I mean,
we would always be oversized.
we're not going to, we're going to make sure that we're built for the future,
Yeah.
you know.
But then the problem, then we're flushing water and waste. You know, I mean, just
Yeah, I mean, and you would have to look at where, okay, you run into this property, but then I got to run another 1,000 feet to loop this system because I can't have a 1,000-foot dead end line. That's only getting drawn off by one person at the very end. You know, their water quality is not going to be great. So then, you're going to have additional costs because now you're looking, I got to make tie-ins for these.
do these scenarios brought to council when we annex properties? I mean, isn't this part? Maybe we at the council, maybe we decide we don't want to annex it because we can't afford to run the, you know, or cut a deal with them. We'll annex you, but here's the deal. I mean, we don't really look at that cost when we annex properties. Shouldn't we be? I mean, if it's okay, well, maybe that's part of the plan. Is we have all these properties. If it's unusually high, we need to know that when we decide to annex, right? I mean, does that seem? I don't know.
I think
Dan,
there's
It would seem to me, though, I think we kind of said already. I think the goal is extending water and sewer service to these properties, and I think perhaps with recent actions we've taken, Tappan Street kind of comes to mind. I think the die has been cast, to quote Julius Caesar, but I think we need to kind of make it a little less cumbersome on these new residents as well, in terms of the cost that because I think that water and sewer service is one of the non-negotiables for a municipality. I don't know. It's a tough one.
Well, we were not expecting a clear, easy answer tonight, but these are the things that we sit and debate and look at the numbers and look at the options, and we wanted to come and present this. Again, not looking for an answer necessarily, but maybe, obviously, direction. But on the other side of that, are there parts of these scenarios you're like, absolutely not? That's something we should not consider, and that gives us, again, guidance to come and refine it and come back to you as a group to say, okay, here are a few options.
Dan, to your point, which was a very good point, it's not just water and sewer. It's as you grow geographically, how about your fire stations? Can you accurately or properly service an area, or police, or any of the services that you're promising in that legislation? So perhaps you have a review process in place, but perhaps that needs to be tweaked to make sure you're taking into consideration the financial aspect of that actual annexation, particularly in light of how quickly they're coming in.
So I got kind of the flip side of that a little bit. Instead of saying, you know, kind of going off of saying, no, we're not going to let someone annex in because we don't run a water line. Let's say they're in the heart of Finley. They've been in the city corps forever. Okay, you have in the middle, and they parceled off, and a new house is being built there, and it's 500 feet away. You know, then what's the difference between that or them annexing in? You know, we would assume to run that service down to them to get that, water over there. That's why I was just kind of talking with Jason is, what if someone builds a brand new house in the middle of Finley and there's no water line to that spot? I mean, it's going to be tough to find it, but say you have one of those scenarios and someone starts building a house, it's the same scenario. You're going to tell, then you would have to tell that person too that, well, we made the people that annex in run their line. You have to run your line as well,
I'll add to that scenario. What if you had a house that was 102 feet away from a sewer line that's currently on sanitary, and they didn't want to be on septic, and they didn't want to be on a septic, but they couldn't access the sanitary line 102 feet away. Whose responsibility is it? And obviously, we know that that's the situation we have discussed previously. I mean, this is really the same question in a water example, and I'll go back to what we say when we annex, and kind of echoing Councilman Bauman's point. We say that we're going to provide services to property within the city of Findlay. And it doesn't say we're going to provide services to the property of Findlay as long as it's not too expensive. It says we're going to provide services to the properties in the city of Findlay. I think that's what we should move to. How we do it is a different story. I'm going to recommend that we table this discussion for now. It gives the committee a chance to chew this over a little bit. Have conversations with Jeremy one-on-one, and as you all see fit, and that we have another meeting to discuss. This is just not an easy one, and I don't even know how we would write a recommendation or what we'd. I got to kind of think about what our final product from this committee is going to be. And then decide what we would be doing towards that final product. Is it a recommendation? Is it a change to our water sewer rules? What? But I've got more information. I personally need more time to mull this over.
And can we change that? I mean, I kind of want to change the wordage a little bit, because I don't want to say to annex properties only, because we're going to run in this situation into the city.
Yeah,
and I don't want the people that have annexed in because they are wanting service, or they want the safety protection that, like, well, the city's didn't want me annexed because they don't want to run the water line. So can we change that to not say annex, just say,
I had
citizens.
to send something to get this on the agenda. To
I know,
Denise.
no,
The
I know,
language
but
is all
after the
mine, but
conversations that we had, it's
yeah.
like now we're
Yep.
weighing whether or not to annex someone in because we don't run a water line. That's not the point.
Yep.
Of I want. What if, like I said, someone in the heart of Findlay this happens to too? So
Yep. Point noted. So with that, I'd make a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to table, please say aye.
Aye.
And the item is tabled. Let's move on to water rates.
all right, so pretty much gave you the updated versions of what we have in the third quarter. So again, you have one sheet that just pretty much shows you the the numbers across the board with no rate change. And like I said, the rate change is not what we're expecting or anything like that. That was just from conversations wanting to have that a balance. So I show one without the rate change and one with a hypothetical on there. So there's 2 sheets for that.
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about?
On the water,
On-
sorry,
I'm sorry.
water.
Okay, I had sewer, okay, water. Okay.
Blue, it's blue.
Yep. Okay.
So anyways, what I have updated on that, and you'll see a little bit of change throughout the numbers, is the operating budget at the bottom. Since we're kind of in that time zone, we kind of know where we're at, our projection numbers are, and our projected give back. Those aren't final numbers, but we have that included in there, so that way, as we're working through that, we're kind of incorporating that. And then also the capital budget numbers, across all 3 of these, I have adjusted to what has been appropriated and what I'm expecting to appropriate by the end of the year. And then the following year, you'll see that number, or the next year, so you'll see 26's capital budget go up, because there was in sewer and storm, and probably some water too. There were some projects that we weren't able to complete this year, but we're going to be doing them next year. So those funds are going to be moving to 26. So I started adjusting those. I know it's only 1 year out, so it's not too big of a change. But the kind of biggest thing that we had across here is adding in what we're projecting for a give back with our operational type side. But you can kind of look at of what we presented to you guys in the first quarter compared to now. We've been saying that kind of that 27, 28 time zone is going to be where we need to have pretty hard discussions about what our water rates are going to be looking like in the future. But you can kind of see, because we did not do as much capital on some of this stuff, it pushes the years down the road just a little bit more. We do have a master plan, as everyone know, that is going on right now. We're about a good halfway through that. So yeah, early they said May or June of next year, we'll have the pretty much final copy of that. So we'll get a good idea of what our capital is going to look like for the next quite a few years. And then also part of that, they're doing a rate analysis on that. So you're going to see a lot harder numbers on that going forwards. I wasn't too much change on that, but I did want to reflect and let you guys know that, hey, we do notice that years, that's kind of getting pushed back a little bit, but that's just because our capital and how we're reacting with our operating and stuff like that is prolonging that number. So like Rob was saying earlier, that's something we keep an eye on going forwards to see where that kind of break point's going to be.
So if you can see in the second version of this, that actually shows in 27, 28, 29 rate increases proposed. And this is discussion that we had even when we did this a few years ago. Across the state of Ohio, a majority of municipalities just set in practice that they add a 3 to 4% every year. It's a gradual increase. It just moves along with inflation and costs associated with running the plant and the actual water system. The discussion at that time was, let's make the adjustment, let's do it incrementally, and do lump sums as we march through to see what actually the changes will reflect. So that's what we did.
Well, specifically, what did you do? Like, what
So-
percent did you add on?
So 27 and 28 is a 7%.
Okay, 27. Is this written anywhere?
I have it on there on that rate change. I have a parentheses on there, but it did not print out.
Well, that
So
okay.
I'll
All
make
right.
sure on that
Okay.
next
So
one.
all right. So
I tried to
27.
add that in just Excel over. I need to widen out the
Okay.
box.
27 to 28 is 7%.
And then
28.
29 was a 6%.
28 to 29 is 6%.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, those are hypothetical numbers.
And then
just to get it
29
to
to
a balance.
29 to 30, it stays the same
Yeah, because
after.
of that.
Okay. So there's a 7% and a 6%.
Yeah, so I looked at trying to do 333, but by the time you got to 31, 32, you were still in the red. So this was the least amount I could get. You can kind of look at 34 with minimum reserve. We're only carrying over $600,000.
Mhm.
Kind of what we discussed. So that's pretty minimal of what that minimum reserve would be on that. So, but yeah, those are hypothetical numbers. We should be getting a lot of information, like I said, from that master plan that we'll be seeing in 26. So that's going to kind of speak the truth on, you know, what your 27 and beyond is going to look like.
And the capital line items are placeholders based on our 10-year capital plan that's already existing. So those are not fictitious numbers. Those are already scheduled projects that are in our 10-year plan. However, as we all know, with the master plan that's coming, that will change, we anticipate. So
Jeremy, did the numbers with the 7 and 6%, were they run through the utility billing software for those numbers?
Yes. Yeah, that's not just doing 7%. That was actually using those numbers to come up with it.
And that's across all meter sizes and.
Yep.
Okay.
So I went across there, I pretty much plugged in all that
Same,
information,
okay.
and then I carried it the following year.
So for the benefit of the group, when we're doing the budgets this year, I'll be inserting for 27 in the second year of the budget, even though you can only adopt 26 in January. I'll be inserting the 27 numbers into the calculation.
Which will have 7% on it.
I would, well, it's not a point of discussion at this point. I mean, this is, I guess, the role of this would be that having this third quarter discussion is there's no recommendation to change anything in 2026
Right.
is what the point of this discussion
Yeah,
is in the third quarter. So
So this is a placeholder to keep us even until we get the master plan.
in 2026, we will be,
Yeah.
just to let everyone know on the
Yeah.
record and who's sitting here and
Right.
who might not be sitting here next round,
Right.
is there, we will be having a different conversation in 26 that we
Yeah.
will anticipate a change in 27.
Yeah.
So,
Well, just a real quick clarification, there will be a recommendation to council, and the recommendation, based on what you're saying, and what will become a motion at some point in time, was that no rate change be made in 2026. So we're going to recommend something.
I'll second
But,
that motion.
but that's
Grant.
that's not my motion. I'm still I'm still in discussion, and I want to know why we don't. Why did you? Maybe you were saying this as I was looking through other stuff, and my single focus, I didn't hear you. But why aren't we doing 3% in 26? And or is it really just to get that water plan in first before we?
there's different theories behind this, and based on the discussions we had before the last rate change in 24, it was stagnant for so long, almost 12 years, that we wanted to see what this would do. Now, what we predicted is actually happening. Now we want to actually have the master plan presented to us to understand what that's going to look like with the capital expenditures. And in addition to that, the master plan's going to include an actual rate trajectory for us. They're going to recommend, based on what the master plan's going to include, here's where we recommend your rates to be moving forward. So again, if we can make a change, if maybe next year the discussion will actually have the master plan and it'll have a rate discussion moving forward, and the answer is right in front of us. But we presented it this because we don't know what that's going to look like next year. So
Yeah, kind of going off what Rob was saying, and with the master plan, I think there's too many unknowns right now to make that decision when we're actually this close to getting a plan. Yes, would it benefit if we did it next year to help build in the future? Probably, but I think there's still a lot of questions on what direction we need to go with the water plant, what's our processes need to look out there, what is actually needing upgraded. I think we're within 6 months of having that. I think it's too close to kind of jump right now. So that's why we're kind of holding off until 27, because like Rob said, we'll have a for sure decision after that.
So, Jason, a question for you: did we see any change in consumption of water based on the increase in rate? So one would think, make it more expensive, we'll use less of it. However, I would also think another driver is the fact that water isn't falling out of the sky, and Mrs. Russell has been watering like crazy, doing her best to make you happy. So which is the bigger driver?
Well, we have not seen a decrease in usage with the rate increase. We appreciate your wife watering the grass. We love seeing green grass.
What is the inflation rate built into the operating expenses?
That was 3%.
3%? Can we
Do you
show
ever-
that on this somewhere?
Yeah, I can add
I
that
thought
on
that
there.
was a request a grant at one point, wasn't it?
Yes. Do you ever plop 5% in there and see what happens to your model?
I think we did at one time, probably I think in the first quarter, or the second one we did. So I mean, we can take a look at that, but we've been doing a 3%. Because and same time with that, I don't want to be overinflating and, then someone saying, well, why'd you use 5% instead of 3%? So I'd rather be conservative on the 3% side at this time. So that's why we kind of decided on that.
But I'd also want to know. I want to know worst case scenario, and
Yeah,
the hardest thing about the future is predicting it. But
correct.
I'm not asking for you to run every single different scenario and present it to us. But I would think, for your own consumption benefit, if we entered into a higher inflation time and you saw the model fall apart within 5 years, you better have a plan. You better have a response ready if that scenario raises its.
I think we do. I don't, but to your point, to present every scenario to the committee, I think we're bringing best case scenario, realistic, practical, balanced recommendations. Because, we go on high capital and then it doesn't happen where, if somebody might say that, oh, you're just padding your bottom line. And that's not the case. I mean, we're using true numbers, balanced numbers, and modest even. So, but to your point, I think if there was an inflation increase, we've ran those numbers. We're just not presenting those to you currently. So, but 5% is a pretty big number, I think.
Okay. I see what you're saying there, Rob, but to Grant's point, Councilman Russell's point, the end goal here, though, is to not only pay for current capital projects, but the end game being eventually we're going to have to bite the bullet and replace our water treatment plant. So we need to put money in the bank too.
But you're not going to pay for a new water plant.
No. I understand that, but
I hear you, and it's a great point. But that's going to be probably a debt question at some point. But again, the master plan is going to give us a lot of those answers, and we made the initial change 2 years ago so we could afford to get the master plan, maintain operations and the level of service that's expected and people have come accustomed to. So we're there. It's just let us get that master plan answer, because that's going to answer your question that you just pointed out. Like, okay. I mean, when and how are we going to address the raw water line? When and how are we going to add to our current plant? Are we going to add a plant? I mean, those are the discussions that are being had right now. So
understood.
More to come.
Yeah, understood. My point was just more for discussion purposes. Yeah.
Okay.
When can the reserves be tapped? Under what conditions? So we have minimal reserves, and the reserves for a purpose, in case of something.
I don't know if
You don't have codified minimum reserves required for these funds, with the exception of EPA required reserve equipment, sewer plant.
The EPA actually mandates that we have 3 months of operating in our bank, and that's what that is.
So if they require us to have it, do they have the rules for when we can use it?
I don't have that answer. I'm leaning back.
I was gonna say, once a year, I have to submit, basically all of our expenses, all of our revenue, our operating costs, through the asset management portal. There's not a clearly defined, basically that says if it drops to this, then you can do this. I mean, but they do track it, and I have to report it to them each year, so.
Have they ever come back to you with any kind of summary or review of it? Is it just strictly a reporting function?
We've had dialogue about it, but they've never come back with clear guidance or you need to do this. It's just, as of right now, it's just a reporting feature.
So if this committee in a reserve discussion would create something similar to sewer where you had a equipment replacement or something like that, would that money have to be excluded out of that reporting function to the EPA in terms of, because it's not technically operational reserves at that point, could you include it?
I'd have to go back and look at everything and talk to the agency and see if I'd be allowed to include it.
If there's any kind of write-up on that, I'd be interested in looking at it. Not
Okay.
just so I'm aware of it.
Yeah, no
Thanks.
problem.
You know, one of the reasons I bring that up is because you're going to, on this, we're looking at going into 2027 and for 2027 having a 7% increase, and yet we're going to have a 5.8 or $5.1 million in the water fund balance. Although that's really only a $2.3 billion water fund balance because 2.8 of it has to be reserved. And if we're reserving it simply to make the EPA, I don't know if that's Ohio or federal, happy on some report, and the end result is a 7% increase for the citizens, I think that's a worthwhile question to ask, is what those reserves are for.
Basically, under the asset management protocol, if everything falls apart, we have to be able to repair and get the system back up and running. So I can dig into it a little bit more, but it's all under their parameters of asset management and ensuring that we can keep the system and that we have the funds to keep the system operational. And if we're getting close, then they give guidance. If I understand it right, they begin to give guidance as to how we should and shouldn't do things, and potentially put us in violation if we're not handling things in the appropriate manner.
But this isn't like, and Jim, I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's not like we had that sitting in a separate account wanting to be tapped into. That's just pretty much, it's in our water fund, and the EPA says pretty much in layman's terms is don't let your bank account go lower than this number, because you got to make sure.
Basically an insurance.
Yeah, it's just pretty much you got to have 3 months operating, make sure your bank account doesn't. So we call it minimum reserve, but you know it's not like we can tap into it. It's just
Well, if we
that's
had
what
an-
our bank account
If
needs
we
to
had
be.
an emergency, we would tap into it and then put a plan in to replace it, wouldn't we? I mean,
Right,
it's our
yeah,
money. We
and
would
tha-
use
and
it.
that's what you
Yeah.
know we would have to have a conversation with
Right.
EPA on
And-
that. But their first question is going to be, well, why'd you tap into it and what's your plan to get back? Because you need
Sure.
to be at 3
But if we
months.
have an emergency, just
Right.
do it and then.
Yeah.
If
we'll-
we're in that situation, the EPA is going to be sitting here having the conversation with us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure.
you see that in other communities.
You might want to rename that on this sheet to the EPA recommended reserve or EPA
That's a good
mandated reserve, whichever it is.
That's a good idea. Put EPA in there and it's.
Recommended minimum balance, or it's technically not a reserve, it'd be more of a balance, yeah.
But also, and I think you stated this, I'm just looking now at the one with some rate increases, 7% in 27, 6% in 29. Even with that scenario, there has to be more adjustments in rates in 20, 30, 31. The years of 14 years of no rate increases are most likely over. Okay, I for one say that, just in my opinion, looking at this information in this manner, to me is very clear, and I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate, Rob, the fact that I was getting ready to jump your presentation because you didn't have the alternate rate pro formas here as we had as the water rules request. But this is good. This is clarity that I think is it's new for, we saw it last year. I like seeing it even more this year. I think this is a good step forward for the Water and Sewer Committee and running of these funds. I appreciate the work that went into this. I'd make a motion that no rate change for we recommend no rate change for 2026.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor of a recommendation of no rate change for 2026, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
This is specific to water.
This is specific for water. On to whatever the next one you pull up, Mr.
Sewer,
Cal.
green.
On to sewer.
This is an easy one. I mean, they're sitting pretty well right now. Same thing. We got a long-term control plan that will be coming out late next year. That will be getting finalized. But with that, we have quite a bit that was already built into that capital plan. So that's why you can kind of see on some of those capital expenses once you get into 26 and beyond, they go from a 2.6 million to over 5 million, 6 million in some areas. That's just kind of setting money aside to see where we're at. Now, what that ultimate number is going to look like, we still got to determine that. But I kind of wanted to show with that we still have quite a bit in there for having, I believe it was over $40 million worth of projects I had over the next 10 years for long-term control plan. So that way if that number goes up here later, we'll have plenty of time still to do any kind of rate changes. So I think at this point, sewer out of any of them is almost the easiest one.
I just want to mention one thing, and I know you can all see this, but two lines that have, well, the one line on the sewer, debt service, 0. You don't see very many sewer funds that have no debt. And even on the water fund, very minimal debt.
Very minimal. Yeah.
So the city of Findlay is in really great shape with their debt on their water and sewer funds.
Jim, one of the state auditor was identified that we weren't investing enough capital, right? So when we do the water plan, I would think that would move the needle quite a bit on that, on their evaluation of our finances.
I don't have a breakdown of the components that their system analyzed.
Oh.
So why don't I maybe send out a request for if there is a breakdown available in that system. It's just saying overall capital
Yeah.
from their evaluation in their system. I don't know how much they weight water, sewer, street, and they might shock us and say, well, we don't rate water and sewer because they're separate enterprises. We just don't know. Let me see if I can find something out for that for you.
I thought in the past that that had been about physical facility a lot was our conversation. But
You ready for a motion? Yes. I'll make a motion that we not change the sewer rates for 2026.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to recommend no rate change for 2026. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We will recommend no rate change for 2026. Mr. Cal, what do we have left?
All right, so storm, and I'm going to correct you before you correct me, Jim. Stormwater account is next. It's the orange one.
So that should say stormwater account.
Yeah, it's a header that I don't see until after I print it, and then I didn't see it until I just looked at it, and I know Ginger gets me every time I write a letter to you guys to change it to account. So,
Hey,
all
bring,
right.
bring that back.
So storm side, same thing like water. We have one showing just straight out numbers as no revenue changes, and then the second one is looking at revenue changes on that. As you can kind of see through here, same thing. Give back for operating expense, and then also our capital budget, especially from 25 to 26, has adjusted quite a bit. 25, we didn't get as much storm out. We got more sanitary and water out, but we're going to be storm heavy next year. But if you look at capital down through there, there's really very small or minimal projects that we're doing with storm, and storm is a pretty big factor in our roadways and our drainage. And it's always seems like it's one of those neglected items because it's not moving sewer and it's not pushing water to your house. It's, a lot of people don't realize like, well, it's not doing anything. But it plays a very crucial role in pretty much our roadways. The way our operations have changed and how we're interacting with each other, we're actually getting a lot more information and doing our storm. So we're seeing a lot of these problems that we have collapsed pipes. We have breaks in our pipes where we got storm sewers that are affecting our roadways and affecting the traveling public. So because of how we've changed that, we're getting a lot more information. It's cleaned up, not that we haven't got it before or anything like that, but it's really streamlined the process, and we're making sure when we go out on the street, we're checking all this stuff. And one of the big things that we've seen was the storm is one of those that got neglected. And then I started looking at the capital plan. It's like, well, man, if we're only spending, like in 28, $800,000, $200,000 of that is probably equipment. And then it leaves you about 600 to $500,000 for a project. Any more of that doesn't get you very far, especially when you're starting, you're not putting in 10-inch pipe. You're putting in larger pipe that has a bigger footprint. So, the storm fund is not utilized to its full potential, and repairing our storm pipes just because we don't have a healthy fund to go with that. So on the next page, pretty much have kept the same thing on that, but I'll let kind of Rob pass that out, but there was a slight change to the revenues that we were looking at that would not affect, and I'll kind of let Rob go into a little bit more, but this will help increase some of our revenue in there, so we can start building on our storm account, I said it right, storm account, so that way we can start doing more projects, start extending sewers in other areas, we can repair these areas that are needing it done. So you can see like the capital line item on the second sheet, we just added in additional $300,000. That's still a small amount, that's pretty much your equipment. So that's taking your equipment out of your capital and covering that so that way you can do more storm projects. So with the size that with the increase in revenue that we were looking at, pretty much all your residentials will not be affected. What this is doing is pretty much reworking all your large sites. So pretty much your...
Hang on. I want to interrupt for a
sorry.
second. So now we're referencing how we
Yeah.
came up with the actual variance to get us out of the red. It's this sheet I just handed out. The left table is your current storm rate base fees based on the categories. And then the right table is the proposed base rates. And looking at other communities, they use different rankings and different measurements to actually do this, but we've always been a square footage, an acreage for measurement. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to clean up the table and make it a little more concise, like we have some other things and other departments. But the goal of this is to get the most impact for the storm fund with the people that are impacting the impervious the surfaces the most. So working backwards from commercial and industrial with the larger acreage and we were able to accomplish what we wanted to for the storm fund health without impacting the residentials and the smaller acreage. So, you want to?
Yeah, so if you look at that chart, the one that is on the left, the first chart, the current storm base, that's pretty much how it's structured now. So you can kind of see that A1 through F1, it's variable by the site. So, you know, that when we get those type of things, it's you know, it's a lot of conversation between us and utility billing on actually where those fall. There's no hard and true fact on that. So it's, you know, and Jason is kind of shaking his head on that. It's, you know, kind of, you know, what we are deciding on, what we agree on that. So we wanted to clean that process up going forward. So that was a lot easier for both of us to understand why that was going. So we, on the right side, we went to the proposed storm rate, which is just pretty much breaking it down by straight acreage of what you have out there. So like I said, your residential, none of those are affected or anything like that. It's pretty much from your 8 acres and down. We have adjusted those prices so that way they have the larger industries or the larger footprint that people have out there are the ones that are actually impacting our storm sewers and our impervious areas out there. So that is making slight adjustments to those type of users, and you can kind of see there's not many users that are on that. You know, you have 70 some, if I run the numbers real quick. So looking at that, and then to give you an idea of how that's actually looking at it, I ran a comparison of what businesses in Findlay would be if they were in other towns. So if you flip to that second sheet, what I wanted to go off of is more your big box stores. So pretty much your Lowe's are pretty much going to be the same Lowe's, give or take, in the same town or in different towns. Your Menards, your Walmarts. So like if you look at Lowe's right there in Findlay with the new proposed cost, they'd be paying $2,400 a year. In Lima, they'd be paying $13,000. Dayton, $16,000. So we're still quite a bit under what our regional partners, I guess if you want to say, or cities are looking at. But we're adjusting that to give ourselves a little bit more revenue, not affecting residential or anything like that. Just pretty much going off the large footprint users, so that way we can get a little bit more money in our storm account. So that way we can slowly start building out a little bit more storm system as we're going forwards. And then with that, I also have in there in the capital plan. I know that was talked about before, the Eagle Basin. I put that actually in the capital plan because of we didn't put it in operating yet because we don't know the truth. So I put that in capital because that can then be shifted.
It's
but
just a placeholder.
it's just a placeholder right now, what we have. So that is included in there. But, you know, outside of that, if, you know, the biggest thing, like I said before, is we're seeing a lot more of our storm infrastructure that is
Wait a minute,
needing
what do you
some
mean you
work on.
put the storm basin in capital?
Yeah,
So
I know that was I
wait,
had a note that
hang
was,
on, hang, so to build it or to operate it?
no,
No, the
to operate
operating.
it.
So to operate it, it's in capital.
Yeah. It would probably be operating, but I put it in capital because it was easier as a variable to throw in there.
Oh,
So
okay. It's
just
a placeholder.
just for clerical,
All right.
under the capital improvement rows, there's capital budget, and then there's other. The other had nothing in it. So, and Jeremy and I were talking about some of the potential other storm projects that might come along, as well as the consideration of what the operating cost of the basin's going to be. You know, 3-4 years ago when we were talking about the design of this, it's 150 and then it was 170. So we're like, let's put $200,000 in for the operations of this basin when it's actually up and running. And then we're like, well, we talked about the cost of some of these storm projects. So we felt 300 was a fair number to put in there
Okay.
for that. So again, there was nothing in the other line. So to keep it clean, we just put it in as a placeholder.
Well, we are significantly less expensive than all these other communities, in every category. I mean, for every comparison, I guess.
But if I may, just again, what we wanted to do is make the most impact on the individuals that impact the impervious
Yeah,
the
no,
most.
I think
And
that's a good approach.
There's another, I mean, as we look at this, as we get down the road in a few years, if there has to be other adjustments made as we have these conversations, we still feel there's some latitude with some of the larger acred categories. And so we don't anticipate having to impact the residentials for some time. When I feel if you can see the comparison, it makes sense. And we compare in a favorable compared to others.
kind of makes me ask, are we doing enough? Are we having more overflows into the river that we shouldn't be? You know, I mean,
Like,
I guess that's on the sewer side, though. I'm sorry. I guess that's
Yeah, that would be suicide.
suicide.
And that's
Sorry.
what the long-term control plan will be
Right.
attacking those.
and again, I think, again, to Jeremy's point, we've televised more, we're doing more, and we're looking at the actual conditions of these. We're getting a more specific categorized ranking of our projects, and we're getting after that more aggressively than we have in recent years. So we're going to start seeing that cost go up a little bit with the maintenance of our storm system.
With the CSO long-term control plan coming up, should be done here before too long. I mean, you could see some projects where you're gonna have to raise some money from the stormwater fund account, sorry, to do some of these projects. We don't know what that is until that report gets done, but there could be some changes to this, probably is going to be some changes to this.
Yeah.
I think so, but, sorry.
No, I was just,
I guess, but anticipating where, if we do nothing,
Right.
where we will have a negative variance to our fund, we want to try to get ahead of that, and we feel this is the best time. We create a runway, start adding to the balance, knowing that we're going to have some changes and some larger projects and are going to be more expensive. But again, when we ran these different models, I think there's opportunity in the future to make some adjustments that are still going to be not as drastically impacting the majority, the quantity of over 13,000 users.
So in the pro forma, in the capital for 2027, the two pro formas don't match. So I just assume that's an oversight. I personally would have liked to seen the 300,000 in the both pro formas, because that expense is coming. You know, the basin is coming whether we raise rates or not. So not thinking I'm getting quite the same view that I had expected. Minor stuff.
yeah, that was an oversight.
Okay. The question that makes me scratch my head more is that how do we have close to 400 more customers just because we change our proposed rates? Where did we gain the 400 customers?
We broke it down different, probably.
Yeah, so within that, what we were proposing on that, so with the residential, your single family duplex, triplex, and condos will still be all residential type housing will be a flat rate. But before, if you had a triplex, you had, it was just pretty much you were built for that one property. So if you had 3 separate meters across there, you only got bid that whole property, if it was 2 acres or not, got billed $3 for that. So now for each meter that's on there, so each of our triplexes and duplexes will have a meter for each one. Each one of those meters will be billed a residential fee for that. So instead of having one triplex that's $3, now we're getting $9 out of that property. It is a bigger property. It's not a 50 by 100 lot. It's a little bit bigger lot. It's going to have a bigger footprint, but as a residential, you still, even though your neighbor is paying for it, you're going to be paying for it too, because you're using all those resources as
So we're
well.
not
So that's
ra-
why that increase is
We're
there.
not raising the residential, but more people.
We're making sure that everyone that is utilizing the storm is paying for that. So if you have a triplex, like I said, with a meter,
Yeah.
then you'll be getting that. Now, when you get what's going to kind of gets weird, if you have a condo, an apartment area association where they have one master, that's where it kind of gets it kind of gets a little weird on that, where we're going to treat those as a commercial business almost, because they have a large footprint. So they would fall into your B through I categories, and they'd be billed accordingly for that. Just because most of our condos associations are that we have one master meter for the whole site.
In the discussions of the water fund, we saw the thought of continued increases. Well, we had them in 27, 29, and really thought that going forward we would continue to see increases. why the thought that we're only going to do this once and not revisit this in 3 years, or 6 years or something? Or is the thought that we will be coming back and adjusting accordingly? Or is it simply we're waiting, we know we got to start and we're waiting for the long-term control plan to come out and really guide us?
I hate to keep using that as an excuse, but that's our playbook, right? That's going to tell us what we have to spend the money on, the recommendations by the experts. So again, we saw a negative variance coming, and instead of waiting another year or two and having a larger increase, we can accomplish what we need to create that sustainability as we look towards that long-term control plan being done with the least amount of impact to the users. So I do anticipate, to answer your question, I do anticipate that we will be having this discussion. We're going to be looking at this every year. We look at this monthly. So when the time is right to look at what it's going to look like as we march out and, a rolling 10-year plan, we'll be having those discussions.
Do you anticipate doing like this master plan, like we're doing for water? Do you anticipate doing that for sewer, or?
That's what the long-term control
that
plan
is,
is. And
okay.
we're going to have that,
Okay.
what, Q1 of 26 done, completed? With-
No, it'll be later in
Okay.
26.
In 26, we'll have the results of both the long-term control, which is sewer, and then the master plan, which is water. Essentially the same thing called different things.
Okay, I get it. Same
So our water system, from water coming in to the water coming in from the Blanchard, leaving the Blanchard, we're going to have a comprehensive playbook here in 26.
Have we got any sneak peeks at this version of the long-term control plan, and do we have an idea if it's actually going to, that it'll be better than the last one?
It will be. So we're not into the alternative planning right now. We actually just had a couple meetings with the EPA to go over our modeling, to ensure they agree with how our modeling is reacting. And then we also had a meeting with them to discuss on how the Blanchard River reacts with our system and how we need to show that in our model. So we have a lot of smart meters out there right now. So we pretty much got the blessing from them to proceed with how our modeling is showing, and they agree with what we're saying on all that. So right now our consultants are working on the alternative measures to kind of tackle some of these problems. So I'd say here in the next couple months, half a year or so, we're going to start seeing some ideas come across there on how we're going to minimize the CSOs and stuff.
If funding for the flood mitigation gets delayed, does that change your whole?
Not for a long-term control plan.
No,
No, that's totally separate.
But the flood controls does impact that, doesn't it?
It does. But like I was saying earlier, a lot of our storm system was from when the subdivisions were originally built. And they're needing repairs. So we got a lot of repairs out there on itself, but it does have an impact on that because we're not having water go backwards or come out of our catch basins and stuff. So it will have an impact. But no matter if we had flooding or not, I mean, you go across any city, they're repairing storm pipe all the way across there. So I think being here in 10 years, I can see that is the one utility out of the three of them that I can see we're behind on because of what is being done. Hopefully you never have to touch them, but it's the one every time it rains, it's getting used to.
This is an offbeat question, but can you pick on Hunters Creek because I can name it easily enough? They have a stormwater system that was part of the development of Hunters Creek, correct?
Yeah.
And when maintenance on that happens, we don't just take the maintenance cost and split it out over the homes in Hunters Creek and charge them that maintenance cost. It's a part of a city responsibility, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what this storm fee is covering. It's your operating cost for that.
With one exception, Grant.
The lagoons.
Yeah, we did a assessment for
That's not where I was going with this.
right, but that's the only exception.
To me, to me, that philosophy might be germane to the second item we were talking about. That the collective city is paying for infrastructure that really affects. You can see it affect one subdivision. We bring in the new Calb Acres on the northeast side, and we take it in with its stormwater and its sanitary and its water lines. And 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road, because Calb Acres is made really well, but that's now a city responsibility. And that might be germane to the second point. And the only reason I say it is because by next month I will have forgotten that brilliant observation. So I wanted it on the record right
No,
now.
yeah, that's a great point, because all our subdivisions that come in, no matter how big or small they are, if those are public utilities, in 20 years, if we need to replace that water line, even though we didn't put it in, it's our responsibility to make sure they're still getting water. So that's a great point across all three of them. You know, once they come in, once they're built, they're our responsibility.
And I know we're lining large diameter pipes a lot, but we have a good scope of the condition on our stormwater infrastructure.
Yeah, so we're starting to televise that a lot more. Before, it was, like I said, it was always make sure our sanitary is good. We got to make sure that type of water keeps running. But now we are making sure. In the past couple of years, we started Cameron. If there's a open pipe underground, if it's sanitary or storm, we're checking that out before we're resurfacing. So we started that a couple of years ago, but there's 400 miles of storm pipe within the city, and probably another 200 that we don't even know about, and we're finding them every day. So
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are still some brick storm sewers throughout the city that were built over 100 years ago. So
There's-
that tells
yep.
you what kind of system we have. I mean, it's old, but I'd say we're maintaining it, but you still have those things there.
Props to the bricklayer.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in a recommending mood? Have at it.
All right, let me make sure I get this right. I recommend approval of the adjustment to the tiers on the stormwater rate chart.
Second.
Say it again. Approval.
I recommend approval to the changes to the tiers on the current storm fee chart, for lack of a better term. Yeah, and the rate changes for those tiers that get changed.
Say it again.
I recommend acceptance of the proposal to the storm-based fees.
Acceptance of.
The proposed storm-based fee structure.
I like the second one better.
Less
So,
wordy.
Because it's right on the top of the table.
We have a motion by Josh
Second.
to recommend acceptance of the proposed, and then to make sure that's storm-based fee structure. And who seconded?
Councilman Ballman.
And we have a second. Discussion. All in favor of recommending acceptance of the proposed storm-based fee structure, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, and it is passed, or recommended. And I'll slide that down. And with no other business, we will call this meeting to a close. Thank you.
Don't leave yet, guys. Need your Herbie Hancock.
There you go.
Gotta get a Tommy Boy reference in.
PDFs of all documents. If you want to change the stormwater one to say stormwater account, I wouldn't change any of the numbers for just the title. And then this document, and that needs to be sent to Denise for.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
I know, these are part, this is record of this